We at the Advent Administration are hard at work 24 hours a day to protect and nurture our citizens, and never before has there been security and stability like all.
Hey everyone, we're playing more Long War of the Chosen today. As usual, check out the playlist in the description if you've missed any previous episodes, and let's jump into it. Last time we were successful in liberating New Arctic from Advent control. We shut down the Advent network in the area as well as destroying their command center. Now, an unexpected side effect of this is that we discovered a broadcast signal that Advent were actively blocking. With both the network and Advent gone, the Avenger can now pick up the transmission clearly, and it's apparently coming from Raymond Shen, Lily's father. Needless to say, we're going in to investigate the source. Lily herself insists on deploying on this mission, and I did try to give her plated armor, but we actually can't. There's very limited options to modify Shen's gear here. Now with this DLC mission, we don't actually need to infiltrate. I guess it's because there's no Advent where we're going. And even better than that, we can once again bring 10 soldiers. I decide we're going to take all of Light Squad minus Turkey, just because I don't think assaults are an overly useful class for this particular mission. Instead, I add Chan and Deep from Near Squad to the group. Chan because she has Shredder, which I imagine is going to be pretty useful, and Deep because his flashbangs can actually affect robotic targets. So with those two plus Shen, that gives us 10 soldiers. Now as we deploy here, I should say I've played this mission in the regular game a great many times, but I haven't played it for a very long time. We're talking years and years, possibly since before I started my YouTube channel. So I am going to be rusty. We'll see how we go. Now as we kick things off, I've given Avian and Board AP rounds. We don't actually need to obtain these from the Proving Grounds in Long War. One of the autopsies we did gave us access to building them just as a regular item, and that is a change that I love. I hate the randomness of the Proving Grounds in the regular game. And you can see the enemies here, the mechs. We're going to be fighting a lot of these things. So we either need to get around their armor by shredding or by using AP rounds, or we just need to inflict enough raw damage that the armor doesn't matter. Now to help with this, I've given Visitor the Boltcaster. It has a couple of nice features in Long War. One, it never grazes. A regular hit will always be a regular hit. And second, if we eliminate an enemy with our shot, the weapon reloads automatically. So as long as we can keep racking up the bodies, we'll never have to worry about the one-shot limit. The gun will reload itself at the end of our turn, ready for us to shoot again on the next turn. Now, of course, it's not going to help us right away, since I am keeping Visitor in concealment for as long as we can. It's always good to do that when possible. It just gives us more control in how we activate enemies. As we move into the building's interior, it appears to be some kind of assembly line, no doubt where these mechs have been constructed. Now the machinery looks like Advent tech, and on top of that there's this mysterious voice who keeps mocking us at the end of each turn, and no doubt this voice belongs to the person sending the mechs to slaughter us. Now as for the mechs themselves, they kind of look like Arnie, or Arnie looks like them, I guess. And they're not too dangerous until they activate their self-destruct, which they seem to always do on their first turn. Once they trigger that ability, you want to take them down as quickly as possible. If they survive to the next turn to use it, they'll try and explode right on top of you. And I believe they can yellow dash and still detonate. So there's pretty much nowhere you're going to be safe from these things. And what's even worse is that if we finish them off with an attack, they're still gonna explode. They're still gonna get to use that self-destruct. So if we take them out from
close range,
our soldiers are gonna get caught in the blast. So we want to keep as much distance as we can between ourselves and the mechs. And the best thing to do with these things, and I know it sounds pretty obvious, but just take them down as quickly as you can. If they don't get to activate that detonate ability, then they're really not too dangerous. Now we push our way through the mechs and we come to an elevator, sort of. It's actually designed to transport mechs, not people. So we have to send troops up one at a time. And using the elevator actually blows visitors' concealment. So it seems like I kept him concealed all that time for nothing. Awesome. Now in the past when I played this mission in the vanilla game, I usually do it with 5 soldiers. Here, since we have 10, it kind of creates this mixed blessing for us. Like on one hand, yeah, obviously 10 troops is a lot of firepower, especially since Shen is extremely high level, so we're going to be dealing a lot of damage. But the downside is that having twice the number of soldiers means that we have to hold this position for twice as long as we evac everyone out. And of course, while we're doing this, waves of mechs are coming for us the entire time. So as the majority of our soldiers head to the elevator and can no longer participate in the fight, holding off the enemy reinforcements is going to become more and more difficult with each passing turn. So the basic strat is maybe a fairly obvious one. We want to keep the biggest damage dealers down here in the fight for as long as we can. They're the last ones we're going to evac out. And in this instance, those people staying until the end are Shen, Avian, and Board. Shen because she's high level and she has access to things like hacking and combat protocol that can be really painful to the mechs. Avian has her AP rounds, death from above, and a high aim stat. All these things combined mean that she can punch through the mechs and still get an action refunded. So she can reload, she can use steady, she can do whatever she needs to do. And Board is a ranger, so obviously being able to shoot twice is gonna be quite useful. The ladies do a fine job keeping the mechs at bay, and Shen ends up being the very last person to head up the elevator. Now we have taken control of an enemy mech, and that provides a nice distraction for us. It's kind of like a discount meme beacon, and it allows Shen to evac, so we're ready for stage 2 of this gargantuan mission. In the second area, turrets start appearing. Now, my natural disdain for these things aside, even though they can't move, they do have more HP and armor than the mechs, so they are going to be more difficult to destroy. And you can see here, Shen with her laser rifle does a measly 1 HP. Meanwhile, Board with her AP rounds does a massive 7 damage. So yeah, AP rounds on this mission are really useful, and I am very happy that Long War made this ammo type easier to obtain. I also take a second just to admire the surrounding visuals. This is such a beautiful level when you look outside the factory, and there's every chance that I'm never going to play this mission on the channel again, so we might as well savor this moment. A lot of detail went into this, and I really appreciate it. Anyway, we soon come across this small workshop where a spark is waiting for us. And the cutscene here is kind of funny. It turns out the guy talking to us isn't a guy at all. It's Julian, an AI. It wants us to upload its consciousness into the spark's body. And Julian, with his infinite IQ, decided that trying to murder us was the best way to convince us to help him. And honestly, this strategy is going to be about as effective as trying to insult people to convince them to watch your trash TV shows. Oh wait, never mind. I guess Julian is qualified to be a CEO of a multi-billion-dollar corporation. But jokes aside, the latter part of the cutscene is pretty touching. See, it turns out Shen Sr. created the spark to protect what was most precious to him, his daughter. And it's a really clever twist where the name of the DLC, Shen's Last Gift, it doesn't actually refer to the spark at all, which we thought that it did during the DLC's marketing campaign. It was actually a play on words and a reference to Lily the entire time. And it's such a small thing, but it's really well done. Now it turns out Raymond configured the spark to respond to Lily herself. So the big boy is on our side and we will not be giving him over to the murderous AI. Instead, we now have 11 soldiers at our disposal. So this just keeps getting better and better. Also, now I know why we couldn't modify Shen's armor. The cutscene seems pre-rendered, so she had to be wearing the Kevlar gear. Now, as you'd probably expect, the homicidal AI is slightly perturbed by our decision to keep the spark for ourselves, and it responds by flooding the entire area with poison, trying to take us out once and for all. And here, the game will tell you to send the spark to deactivate the poison while keeping everyone else in the safe room. But that advice is actually only half good. While it is true the mech is immune to poison and we should absolutely send it out, the thing is, any unit equipped with a medikit is also immune to poison, so those soldiers can accompany the spark just as safely. Now the reason for doing this is that the quicker we get units to the other side of the room, the quicker we can get them into position to shoot at the turrets and the mechs that are gonna start spawning in. So this will allow those soldiers who have already crossed the area to provide cover to the other troops while they advance once the poison is cleared. And as we advance, I guess we should cover Julian's lore here. Shen Sr. was developing the AI during the initial alien invasion to help combat the A's. Now, when XCOM HQ was attacked, the aliens didn't just grab the commander, they also got their hands on Julian. They moved his AI to this facility where he assisted in developing the mechs that we actually face off against in the base game. Now at some point he decided he didn't like taking orders from Advent anymore, and he proceeded to slaughter everyone in the factory. A perfectly measured response, no doubt. But ultimately this was just another instance of Julian galaxy braining himself. Advent just severed his connection from the network and locked him away in the facility forever. It seems he wants access to the spark so that he has a moving body and he can finally escape from his digital prison. And I don't know, Julian, maybe instead of trying to shadow realm us, you could have tried asking nicely? That might have been a more effective strategy, but it's too late for that now. We decide Julian is too much of a risk to leave here, so we need to finish him once and for all. And to do that, our troops are going to have to head further up to the higher levels of the building. The good news is that this time there's 2 elevators to use, so we can double the number of troops who we're evacing out per turn. And of course that means we only have to hold the position for half as long as we did last time. And it's pretty much the same thing. Turrets and mechs continue spawning, and as we send more troops up the elevators, it becomes increasingly difficult to keep these ongoing enemies at bay. Now as for the spark itself, it's quite similar to the vanilla game, but there are some key differences. A similarity is that we do start with the overdrive ability, with the usual aim debuff that we'll need a skill to negate. However, a big difference is that we don't actually start with the Shredder ability by default anymore. That's now also a skill that we'll have to pick up later. And while that kinda sucks, on the plus side, our spark does start with 5 shield points, and that is excellent. This boy is gonna be quite the tank for us, I'm thinking. So anyway, we survive that encounter, and then we're on to the third and final area, which is the rooftop. And again, I just love this map. Just this whole mission is so well made. So my plan here is we're going to split the team into 3 groups. Plan A is to just deny Julian the opportunity to attack us at all. Hit him with so much damage and just alpha strike him into oblivion. However, Plan A is also fairly unlikely to succeed. So if Julian does end up hitting us with some garbage AoE attack, the thinking is he'll only hit a third of the team instead of the entire team if we had them all bunched together. Now we could split up into even smaller groups, but the thing about the map is that there's 3 elevated areas that will give us the height advantage. So those 3 spots are the areas we want to occupy. Hence it makes sense to split our team up into 3. Now what is Julian gonna actually do? Since he's been denied his spark body, he settled for this old dilapidated sector pod. Now even though I say it's dilapidated and the game presents it as dilapidated, it actually has more health than a regular sector pod. Well, more than a vanilla game sector pod anyway. How much HP do sector pods have in Long War? Oh, this could be really bad, couldn't it? Well, that's Future Drifter's problem. Right now, first things first, we're going to freeze the Julian pod with Sneckhug's Frostbomb. And this thing has 4 charges for some reason. I think it's some jank with the mission being split into multiple parts. Every time we enter a new section of the mission, his Frostbomb seems to have gained 1 extra charge. Now I'm hoping it won't make a difference because we want to finish this fight quickly. We want to use like 1 or 2 Frostbombs. If we end up using all 4, it means things have gone horribly wrong. Now to help with this fight, I've saved as many consumables as I could for the encounter. We're gonna start with Overdrive on the Spark, and his heavy weapon is actually a Shredstorm cannon, not a rocket. And honestly, I am more than okay with this, because Shredder cannons don't have to worry about scatter. So in some ways, I think they're much better than rockets. So the big boy takes a 90% shot, and of course, he misses. At the start of the turn, I was considering using Avian's Holo Targeter, but I decided against it since I figured our hit chance was high enough already. And I know, how naive of me. This is XCOM, baby. Anything less than 100%, we're probably gonna miss. So yeah, we'll use the Holo Targeter, and it is a shame since using it means that we won't get to attack with Avian's rifle, but on the plus side, the aim buff from the Holo Targeter does give Chan a 100% chance to hit with Chain Shot, so it's a decent trade-off. Now given Chan's the only one who can shred with her gun, we're now going to use a bunch of explosives to get rid of Julian's armor. And once we're done shredding his armor, then it's just a matter of hitting him with as many attacks as we can. Throwing the axe, using the bolt caster, getting big damage with combat protocol. We're just doing whatever we can to sap this guy of his HP. Now we're back to the Spark, and with the holo targeting buff, his aim has only dropped down to 85%. So we take our final shot, and you guessed it, he misses that one too. Of course he does. What else did you think was going to happen? Raymond is rolling in his grave right now. This Spark is definitely not his finest work. So we haven't been able to finish Julian off. Plan A's down the drain. It's the enemy turn, and a bunch of derelict mechs spawn in. Now we're going to ignore these things and just focus on Julian. Once we defeat him, the mission will end. He's the one controlling the mechs, so once he goes down, they're gonna be harmless. And it's a bit weird here. The Frost Bomb is supposed to remove an action point from Julian, but he's still able to attack twice and move. So I'm not really sure what the deal with that is. Thankfully, he's just as useless as the Spark, and he misses when he fires at it. Now with his second shot, he does manage to hit Leo, but he only inflicts 1 damage. I'm honestly not sure how that happened. Why is he so weak? I guess this thing is just the game journalist version of a sectopod. Anyway, it's our turn again, and we're going to continue our attack. Now, even though we couldn't finish him, we have done a great deal of damage to Julian on that first turn, so finishing him off here is pretty easy. And it's Drifter himself who lands the finishing blow. We gain 15 AP for defeating Julian, not to mention a bunch of supplies, and the Spark itself is now going to join our barracks. So the rewards are really good, but honestly, I think playing the mission itself is the biggest reward. It's a really good time, especially since I hadn't played it in so long. I had fun with this. And in terms of how the mod changed the mission, it didn't really do that at all. It changed the number of troops that we could deploy, but apart from that, things were more or less the same as how I remember them. So as we move forward, having a spark is going to be really nice, I think. Because with this thing, there's no will loss to worry about. So it's going to be able to help fill our ranks when the barracks is growing a bit tired. Now, while we've been out destroying a deranged AI, Tygan has been holding up his end too. We've completed the Advent Captain autopsy. That's going to allow us to build the Skulljack. And the developments haven't stopped there. News of our victory in New Arctic has gained the attention of some other anti-Advent groups. Both the Skirmishers and Templars have sent an ambassador each to the Avenger so we can coordinate our operations. And the benefits of these alliances seem to be pretty profound. Not only do we have some extra soldiers, we also have a lot more options for covert ops. So this is when the resistance ring is going to start to become useful. So with the barracks growing and things ramping up, I decide it's time for a third unit, Mellow Squad. And this one's going to be led by none other than the man who's been asking for this run for, I think, several years at this point. Yeah, it's Headbanger, the one and only. These guys are going to be kitted out in black attire, and Sinpai the Skirmisher is going to be part of the team. And so how do our new allies hold up in combat? Our Templar Marino joins some members of Near Squad since the others are resting up after the battle with Julian. And once again, there's a few differences with the Templar compared to the vanilla version. First up, Rend always increases your focus, even if it doesn't finish off the enemy. They also have this new ability called Templar Shield. It adds 5 temporary shield points for a turn, and we can use it every turn. So it allows our Templars to be pretty tanky. And we get into an interesting scenario here. See, I messed up on this mission and I didn't bring a medikit. Our deployments have been going quite well for quite a while now, so I got a bit cocky and I figured we wouldn't need a medikit. And of course, the one time that I don't bring it is the one time that we need it. See, one of those sidewinders inflicts poison on Marino. Now initially, I'm really worried about this since that poison is probably going to gobble up her HP before she can get back to the evac zone. But it turns out there's actually no need to worry. Like we learned in the last episode, shield points protect from poison damage, so we can actually use the Templar shield ability to give ourselves extra shield points every single turn. The poison will then eat away at the newly replenished shield, which is going to keep our HP perfectly safe. And we can just continue repeating this process until the poison wears off, which only takes a couple of turns. So yeah, I am a big fan of Templar Shield. It literally saved Marino's life here. Something else I learn at this point is that jailbreaks are maybe a little janky in a good way. Or at least in a way that's helpful to us, and I consider that a good way. See, we unlock the door of one of the cells, and it actually opens the second cell in a completely different room. And we can control the civilians in that second cell. We can start heading to the evac with them, and we haven't even had line of sight on them from any of our soldiers. So from a purely logical perspective, I'm not sure how much sense that makes. But if it makes our job easier, I'm good with it. So yeah, this mission looked a little bit dicey for a moment there, but it was actually fine. We did really well. So that was our Templar. Now let's check in on Sinpai. On this mission, he's working with Latimer the Shinobi. She's apparently travelled through time and space to join us in this fight. Shout out if you got that reference. We also have Abyssal the Grenadier, and the Spark we've christened as Guardian. Now, like the other hero units, the Skirmisher ability tree is a bit different too. They can no longer automatically shoot twice. Instead, they have hit and run. This gives them an extra action after firing on a flanked enemy. So in some ways this is worse, in some ways it's better. It just depends on the situation. If the enemy is in cover, or they don't use cover, like a mech as an example, we cannot fire twice on it. Conversely, we can move and then fire twice on a flanked enemy, getting a total of 3 actions. And things like Justice still don't end the turn. So we could use Justice, then shoot twice with hit and run. That makes it potentially viable to attack 3 times in one turn. And even further to that, the Skirmishers can also get Chain Shot as a regular ability now. So if we play our cards right, we can potentially attack 4 times in one turn. So there are some pros and cons, but overall this is sounding pretty good to me. Now, as the mission proceeds, we end up activating 3 pods on the same turn. Normally, doing that is something I'm going to complain about, but in this instance, it actually allows us to murk some civilians in the AoE crossfire. So I think in this case, doing it was totally worthwhile. And Senpai goes straight to work. He grapples from the roof of one building across to another like he's Spider-Man. Then a Justice murks one of the Advent troopers. He can then use hit and run to take 2 shots in a row at the other Advent goon. So this guy just got to move and then make 3 attacks. Really nice work. And then this part cracked me up. This civilian, who sadly perished by completely unknown causes, well, the sectoid actually brings him back as a zombie. Now look, Mr. Sectoid, if you insist that this guy needs to die a second time, I guess I have no choice but to comply. I've also given Guardian the laser version of the Sparker gun, so he's able to one-shot the Viper that was active. Now, given that the fight was 4 against 7, 8 if we include the zombie, these guys made it look way easier than it had any right to be. And Flesh is definitely a helpful ability to have. Once you know you've activated all the bad guys and there's no reason to worry about moving on to new tiles, having a high mobility, high damage attack that can ignore cover is really, really useful. Now this mission is another jailbreak, but we've got another interesting development here. Not only do we get some resistant civilians as we normally do, we actually pick up a new rookie who we can add to our barracks as well. See, unlike the vanilla game, the recruitment pool is tiny in this mod, and it doesn't seem to update after each council drop. So once you've used it up, I think it's gone forever. And because of that, as we proceed, I think these jailbreak missions are going to become our best way of obtaining new rookies. So welcome aboard, Nuck Chorus. And with that, we are once again out of time. Things are going really well for us, but we do need to start moving towards the black site, and I think that may be easier said than done. I do have a strategy in mind. I'm not sure how well it's going to work. We'll find out as things go on. I will also say here that the next episode might take longer than the usual 2 weeks to go up. I do still want to keep posting other types of videos on the channel as well, so one of those might come out next instead of a video from this series. We'll just see how we go. But regardless of when the next episode drops, Patreon supporters will still receive a week's early access to it. So you can sign up for only a few bucks a month if that sounds appealing, and the videos are ad-free during that early access period. A link to the Patreon is in the description if you're interested. Also, if you're enjoying the series, please consider leaving a like, a comment, and subscribing to the channel. It really is a huge help to me. So thank you very much for watching. I hope to see you on the next one, and until then, have a great day.